If you're standing in the workshop staring at a pile of scrap metal and wondering whether the next tool you spend money on will actually help you finish the job rather than just collect dust, you're not alone. I get it, every cutter on the market promises precision, speed, and no-fuss operation, and the last thing you want is to pour cash into a machine that either underperforms or ends up needing a whole extra set of accessories you didn't anticipate. That's why before I even clicked buy, I dug through specification sheets, compared a handful of similar units, and tried to picture exactly how this cutter would sit in a real-world shop environment. If you want to check the product details on Amazon, the link is in the description. First off, the Theia plasma cutter is marketed as a 40-amp unit with an integrated air pump, a dual-voltage power supply, and a 6-meter, about 20-foot, torch cable. On paper that sounds like a lot of convenience. You don't have to buy a separate compressor, you can plug it into either 110V or 230V outlets, and the long torch lets you reach corners without constantly repositioning the whole machine. Those are the headline features that most sellers highlight, but let's break down what they mean when you actually start cutting steel, aluminum, or even mild copper. Who should consider this machine? If you're a small shop owner, a hobbyist who already has a decent hand drill and a benchtop welder, or a DI you're looking to add plasma cutting to your repertoire without investing in a full-size industrial system, the Theia fits nicely. The built-in air pump eliminates the need for a separate compressor that can easily cost a few $100s on its own. For someone who only has a standard home garage outlet, the dual-voltage capability is a real time saver. You can plug it straight into a typical 110V wall socket, then later move to a 230V shop circuit without buying a new unit. On the other side of the equation, this isn't the best pick for a high-volume production environment. If you're cutting large sheets day after day, the 40-amp rating will start to feel limited compared to 60-amp or 80-amp models that can handle thicker material with less strain on the components. The integrated air pump is convenient, but it's also a trade-off. Its flow rate is tuned for moderate use, not continuous high-speed cutting. So, a commercial fabricator who needs to punch through inch steel non-stop might find the pump struggling and end up buying an external compressor anyway. Now, let's talk about the practical strengths. The biggest win for me was the no high-frequency design. In traditional plasma cutters, high-frequency arcs can cause electromagnetic interference, which sometimes messes with nearby electronics, something you might notice if you have a CNC controller or sensitive measurement tools nearby. Theia's non-HF design means you get a cleaner arc, which translates to fewer spikes when you're working close to other equipment. In my own tests, I was able to run the cutter right next to a digital multimeter without any erratic readings. The torch itself is surprisingly flexible. The 6-meter cable gives you room to maneuver around larger workpieces, and the PT80 torch head has a decent ergonomic shape that feels natural in the hand, even when you're holding it for a few minutes at a time. The included accessory kit, which comes with a ground clamp, nozzle set, and a few spare tips, means you don't have to hunt down extra parts immediately after unboxing. That's a subtle cost saver that many reviewers gloss over, but those little extras add up, especially when you factor in shipping. Safety and certification are also worth a mention. The unit carries TÜV approval, a European testing mark that indicates it meets a solid set of safety standards. While it isn't a guarantee of flawless performance, it does give a baseline confidence that the machine won't have obvious electrical hazards or glaring design flaws. For anyone who worries about the plug-and-pray syndrome, plugging a plasma cutter into a wall and hoping it won't fry your circuit breakers, the TÜV badge is a reassuring checkpoint. Where the machine shows its limitations is in the finer details of cutting quality. The 40-amp output, combined with the built-in pump's airflow, performs well on 10mm mild steel and thinner aluminum, but when I tried to cut 12mm stainless steel, the cut edge started to become ragged near the end of the pass. That's not a deal breaker if you're only doing occasional hobby projects, but it does signal that the cutter is optimized for lighter material. Also, because the air pump is part of the same housing, the unit can get noticeably warm during extended use. If you plan to run it for an hour straight, you'll want to make sure the surrounding space has adequate ventilation, otherwise the internal cooling fan will ramp up, and you might notice a slight drop in cutting speed as the motor works harder to stay cool. Another practical consideration is the power flexibility. While the dual voltage feature sounds great, you still have to set the machine to the correct voltage via a small switch on the side.